Just figured I'd see if you wanted to Zoom.
Yeah,
Uh,
man, I got some time.
all right. I don't know. I didn't know what to talk about. I, th I thought we could go through either the flood story in Genesis, or we could talk about those alternate sites for the city of Enoch, or what I've been looking at today is really might be fun to talk about.
All right.
Because I think that one would that's just a great and
Oof.
it's just a major thing. And I was looking at just understanding better and better how all that plays together.
Hmm.
It all connects together great in my theology. So,
Right. Um, I guess we can do a little bit of both. I mean, do you want to start with I don't know, alternate sites of what do you say?
the city of Enoch, that is a
City of Enoch.
fascinating subject. I think that is something that the audience would really want to hear. It's
All right,
so
well, you want to talk about that then?
okay. Let's do that one.
I'm think maybe we can do some Enoch for the channel, and then I'd be curious to kind of look into Romans here a little bit if we have time.
All right. All right. Yeah, this alternate sites, all possible alternate locations for the city of Enoch, though. It's a great subject because it, it's something where the individual out there looking into this, they'll suddenly realize they'll be like, yeah, there's different ways I can go with this. Like I can decide which I think makes the best sense and maybe go a different way on some of this. Because as I was talking to you, one of the sites I mentioned, it sounds like you really thought made a lot of sense. So, but I should give the four sites, you think? I'll give the four
Yeah.
that as I've looked into this over the years, I've had these differing ideas on where the city of Enoch could be. And the one I've presented in the videos here at Son of Bruno follows the view that I think is the best view. And that is that the city of Enoch is the same as the ancient city of Uruk in ancient Sumer. And there's reason to believe that. I've gone over that in some other videos. And but there's some linguistic reasons and so forth. And there's one final reason I might get into eventually. But so that's the default location I've used. But it doesn't have to be right. That might not be it. And I've thought that perhaps it could have been the ancient city of Sodom, because I always wondered, why is it that as the narrative progresses here, there's this wicked city, Sodom? Like, why so? Why should this be the sort of, oh, how can I put it? Why should this be this sort of detail to occur in the narrative? This city, this infamous city, seems like it's something we should already be familiar with, although we shouldn't be. You just have this weird feeling there's this city, Sodom, and Lot goes off that way. And you just think, oh, okay, here's this city that I guess we should know about. Well, maybe it's because it's the city of Enoch. And people would ask, well, why is it called Sodom? And the reason is because this is just the post-Babel designation of it. And really, the term Sodom means scorched. So it's a nickname that's based on the fiery doom and destruction that came upon the city. It's a nickname, kind of like Hai, which means a um, a a mound of ruins, an old abandoned ruined city would be called Hai. And there's actually a couple Hai's in the Old Testament. Well, likewise, Sodom, scorched, that's a nickname for this city, actually. And that's why there's this name difference. But it's just possible that when Cain left Eretz Eden, crossed the Jordan, he may have just hooked south and gone down and established his city, which would come to be known as Sodom. And that's a real possibility for people to consider. It just might be. And there's other reasons it might be. And we'll get into those later. Maybe once we get to Genesis 19 or something. But so Sodom is the second location I've thought it could be. The third location I've thought it could be is Laish, the ancient city of Laish, which would later become known as Dan. Laish is the city where Abraham went and rescued Lot. It sits right at the foot of Mount Hermon, which could connect it to the ancient Jewish belief that the Genesis 6 incident occurred at Mount Hermon. The ancient Jews thought there was a singular place where this happened. It was Mount Hermon. And so I've thought this ancient city of Enoch may have later come to be known as Laish. As for why the name change, it would be a post-tower issue once again, but there's no real linguistic sense to it that I can see. So it's kind of rough there. And the problem with this one is that archaeological evidence would suggest Laish was settled prior to the time of Cain, and that it was vacant during the time of Cain, and that it was later settled, inhabited once again following the time of Cain. So archaeological evidence is against the idea that Laish could be ancient Enoch. But that's the third one that I had considered. And the fourth one I had considered was Haran. Cain may have left Eretz Eden, traveled along the Euphrates somewhat, and founded the ancient city that would come to be known as Haran. And the reason I say that is because there's also I don't know, there's also some ancient legend that connects the Tower of Babel to Haran. But that site is the most doubtful for that. It's where Abraham is from, or it was at least the stopping point until his father died. And then he left Haran and came into the Holy Land. But the archaeological evidence also has Haran as much more ancient predates Cain. So the city itself is older than Cain. So that fourth site then, Haran, it's interesting, but it doesn't work out archaeologically. And there's just not enough reason for it. And again, the name change, there's no linguistic reason that Enoch would become Haran. So, but those first two possibilities I really like. And the second one, Sodom, that may just be right. And there might be some viewers that want to go that direction with it. But I think that Cain left Eretz Eden and followed the Euphrates to Sumer, where the Ubaid civilization was beginning, and he built Uruk. That's what I think. And then that same path was followed by Terah and Abram to go to Canaan. Of course, there's an alternative site for Abram's birthplace. So this pattern may be true, may not. But this pattern's followed again by the children of Israel when they're taken captive by the Assyrians and Babylonians for the Babylonian captivity. And so the people would have walked this path again from Jerusalem to that general area. So there's a repeated movement between these areas. And so I think Uruk is the best location. I think that's where Cain went. It's got to be there, Sodom. I don't know. What do you think?
I think they're both good, man. I just like Sodom because I like what you said on how does Sodom and I suppose Gomorrah as well fit into the narrative. Otherwise, it seems a little random.
This gives it a reason to be there. There's a reason now that Sodom comes into play with
Right.
Lot and Abraham. Yeah.
So that is a cool connection, but Uruk also sounds very reasonable too.
Yeah.
I think I would probably side more towards Sodom, but at the end of but I would have to think about this and look into more myself before I would give you a solid answer.
Well, this will make a good video then.
Yeah.
Because I'll bet there's other people that'll say, yeah, Sodom's it. Bruno, you're silly. It's Sodom, you.
I don't know about that, man.
Yeah. And it's possible that Abram came from a city called Sanliurfa. And it's this ancient city, Orpha, but it has Ur in it, U-R. It's an ancient Ur. And Muslim tradition says Abram came from there. And that's right near Haran. It's just northwest of Haran. So the first leg of their trip could have been from the Sanliurfa to Haran. And I don't know. But the pattern down toward Sumer is followed at least by the Babylonian captivity. And I see a pattern there. So I've followed the pattern. I'm someone that follows patterns, you know.
hmm
So I don't know. But there's patterns with Sodom. So
I wonder where Gomorrah fits in. Why Gomorrah is also added to that. Was it like located close to Sodom geographically?
gosh. Yeah, are those two of the five cities? Let me see. The
Be-
cities of the plain. Let me see if I can get a list of the
all right.
cities.
And as you're looking into that, because although to me it seems pretty interesting that Sodom was where Cain went and it fits into the narrative, but then it's like, well, then what's Gomorrah? Or what's that all about? And if Gomorrah is just kind of random,
There were 5 cities, and they're enumerated somewhere, but they're actually enumerated in uh they're enumerated in a non-biblical text and a tablet, like an Ugaritic, some kind of tablet. Cities of the plain, Genesis. Okay. Okay. Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar, the 5 biblical cities of the plain. Um, I don't know. You caught me off guard with that one. I had to have to go read Genesis again and see why Gomorrah's caught up in that.
I think that's a good question. Or it'd be kind of really cool to get an answer for that. And I know there's so much of the Bible to study, so no harm there. But like I know in the book of Jude it talks about Sodom and Gomorrah being an example of um like eternal fire. Um, and of course Lot comes out of there to continue the narrative. But do we really? And this is kind of I'm kind of restating the question. But despite those reasons, why is Sodom and Gomorrah part of the narrative?
Right.
And I know I asked that rhetorically, and we don't know quite yet, and that's okay. That's part of the fun, is not knowing all the questions, answers all the questions. But it's interesting. I wonder. Obviously, Moses and the priests that were putting this together must have knew how it fit in, but where's that talked about in Genesis?
Well, Genesis 19, I was just sitting here looking at it. So in verse 22, he flees to Zor. And then verse 24, then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire. Let me see. Is this the first mention of Gomorrah?
And I looked at the previous chapter, Genesis 18, and talking about Abraham here.
Oh
So
yeah.
Abraham, Sarah talking, and then verse 16, ESV. Then the men set out from there, and they looked down towards Sodom. And Abraham went with them to set them on their way. Then the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation? All the nations of the earth shall be blessed with him. For I have chosen him, that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has promised him. Then the Lord said, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, I will go down to see whether they have done altogether whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me, and if not, I will know. And then it continues from there. So we do have Sodom and Gomorrah connected with Abraham.
Yeah. Yeah, so those were 2 that were known for wickedness. And Lot goes and pitches his tent where? Near Sodom. That is back in Genesis.
Genesis 18, I'm just kind of skimming through the last part. I know this is kind of a separate idea, but you had shared with me somewhere, I think in Second Kings, on how God can make a declaration, but then if humanity like pities with him or like barters with them or something, he can like also change his mind or something
You too.
if the people are willing. And I kind of see this in the last part of Genesis 18 where Abraham, God tells him that, if he can find 50 righteous in the city, he'll spare the whole place. And then Abraham keeps kind of bargaining with him, and the Lord's like changing his mind or something. This just look like another example. Sorry, that was kind of off the cuff there, but
No, yeah, right. That seems to be, yeah, I've thought about that interaction there and what it means. It's kind of like that's how God talks to his counsel or something. Why is he counseling with a man? It's almost like that's teaching us we're gonna become his new counsel or something, but it's just a vague allegory.
mhm.
I don't know.
And it seems like God makes this like kind of this decision, and everything he says is perfect and correct. Yet when man can have an influence if they have like good intentions or something, or if they like willing to follow righteousness or have righteousness in mind, then the Lord is kind of willing to work with them or something. Or like you said, kind of a foreshadowing of us potentially working with God and the new divine council.
Yeah.
So he has to find 10 people in Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing there. Yeah, this is Genesis 13 where Abraham ventures off to Sodom and Gomorrah.
13.
Yeah, in Genesis 13:12, Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain and pitched his tent toward Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Um, yeah. And so this would mean this is a place where the sons of God came down.
Mm,
If Cain went here, built this city, if this is where Naamah was, this is where the sons of God came down, or one of the places where they came down. And
mhm.
I think they could have came down at many places. I know the ancient Jews thought it was in one place, Mount Hermon, but there's no reason to really restrict it that way. But that is something that comes out in First Enoch.
Did Cain go to Sodom to build a city and then build another city of Gomorrah? I know there's really no answer for that or nothing that really helps that answer, but
Nah, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know. When the other cities popped up, who knows? But
Hmm.
it's just possible this Sodom is Enoch. So it's just a possibility to think about.
I think it's still a good theory though. Like even though Sodom and Gomorrah are mentioned together a lot, it seems like Sodom is still kind of more the main city.
Yeah.
It's mentioned more.
Yeah, those were the two that had wickedness. The wickedness that happened there, I guess, is oh, what's the word they use for it? Oh, it's inhospitality. Um, I've heard some teachers refer to Sodom, they say that when the angels came into town, the men of the town must have somehow known they were angels, and that's why they desired sex with them because of the Genesis 6 incident. And I've thought that can't be right because we have such a similar incident in Judges 19. Unless you want to say that city is also a place where angels came down, but it's a Hebrew city. It's late in history at this point, and it just doesn't make sense. And so, really, this phenomena of sodomizing an outsider, an unwelcome outsider, is it's kind of strange. But it happens in Judges 19 as well. So, but so this trying to make the incident in Sodom strictly like a reference to angelic sex, though. Like, I don't think you can make that connection, really. But I was researching Sodom, and there was a guy that wrote a paper that said Sodom must have had a ziggurat, and so the people of the city, the men of the city, thought that these visiting men were gods that came down or something. They desired sex with them, I guess.
Mm,
It's still kind of strange. It seems like they would desire these men to take women as wives, right? To
hmm.
produce Nephilim? I don't know. Wouldn't you want to follow Genesis 6 a little more carefully? But, I don't know how a would come into play. So,
Right.
anyway, I'm not going to be putting this stuff in the video. I'll be cutting this out. But anyway, Judges 19 needs to be understood in alongside Genesis 19. The two have a similar phenomena going on, and it's regarded as wickedness to God. So, uh, yeah,
Still some good stuff, man.
yeah, this will be fun to talk about. Make a video on this.